folks. And I want to say good morning or good afternoon or evening, depending upon where you are in this global world, because that's what I love about IT is we have desks all over the place and we have friends all over the place. So I wanna welcome you. And this morning or afternoon or evening, we're going to talk about backups and recoveries, and where you can say, you know, they're a piece of cake. My name is Daniel Taylor. I have about 20 years of IT experience. It's not all in SQL Server. I started out back in the day at Nielsen Media Research, and just to put people at ease, no, we didn't take bribes to put the good TV programs on TV. It was pretty well regulated. From there, I moved to become staff specialist and team leads at public supermarkets here in the southeast of the United States. I went from there to become a senior DB at New York Life Direct, and then I'm currently a consultant at Pragmatic Works. I was blessed enough to be chosen to be the tech editor for the Professional SQL Server 2014 Administration Guide. Excellent book if you're getting started or even if you're utilizing SQL Server. Some great information there. One of my favorite chapters in there is actually the Service Broker chapter and the High Availability chapter. I blog at dbabulldog.wordpress.com. If you'd like to follow me, there's my Twitter account. And if you have any questions after this webinar, there's my email address. And Liz, I believe we're going to be sharing out the slide deck and the scripts as well if folks would like them.
Yep, I have your slide deck and Excel file in the handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel right now, but if anybody wants the additional files, they can just email me afterwards and I'll be happy to send them to them.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So today we're going to go over the concepts of backup and restore, backing up our databases and restoring our databases. I was asked, did I want to do a webinar, and I jumped at the opportunity to do one. And the first thing that came to mind was, you know, we could do high availability, we could do partitioning, but I've been going into client sites recently and working with folks, and even at my previous engagement when I was a full-time employee, and I noticed one of the things that got missed or was kind of put to the back burner was the backup and recovery strategy, because we take it for granted. So today we're going to talk about backups, what, when, and how often should I back up. We're going to go over some basic concepts of the types of backups we have. We're not going to have time to go into all of them. We're going to try to go into as many as we can. And we're going to discuss documenting our backups. Then we're going to, once we're complete with backups, we're going to go into recoveries, our restores. We're going to discuss our types of database recoveries we have there. We're going to discuss testing our backups, and we're also going to discuss documenting our restore process. And if we have time, we'll get into some additional backup and recovery tidbits that over the years I've found. Okay.
Your audio is fine, so David,
okay.
You might want to check your settings.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, David. Hopefully you get your audio resolved here. I do apologize you're having that issue. And
Dan, are you there? Now you're gone. Dan? Dan, can you hear me?
important items in this case
hey,
are
Dan.
data. Yes.
We just lost you for about 45 seconds.
Really? Okay. All right, so you probably got to the point then where I said, and we're going to go over, if we have time, additional backup and recovery tidbits.
Sounds about right.
Okay, all right. And then, and I like to think of my backup and recoveries as my safety deposit box. I know where it's at. It's a secure location. I'm ensured that my data, in this case, you know, my valuables, is protected. So we have this common scenario, you know, Mr. Stick or Mrs. Stick Figure A comes and asks us, Mr. and Mrs. DB on the right, can you restore my database for me? And I see it's 50-50. I see the little blurb appear, and then I see a lot of people go into panic mode. And the reason, this is the reason why we're here today, so we don't go into panic mode, so we know the basics behind our backup and recovery procedures and some of the processes we can put in place. And I love this scene from Tommy Boy. It's one of my favorite movies. Hopefully other people out there love it. Miss that guy. He's a great comedian. So let's dive into it. So backups. What, when, how often should I back up? Types of backups and document. So these are the first things we're going to go over today. And right here, if you don't have backups, you're looming for this train here. It's coming down the track and it's looking for you. We need to make sure we have our backups in place. And we're going to discuss the importance of our recoveries as well. I've seen a lot of people get written up over the years, and I've even seen some people get fired for not being able to recover a database backup. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I have seen some people's careers hurt by not having a proper backup and recovery strategy. What, when, and how often should I back up? So my advice to everybody is this, and this is advice. I say back up everything you can. Back up your system databases. Back up your master database, back up your model database, and back up your MSDB. A lot of people ask me, back up my model in MSDB. Yeah, there's information that's stored in there that you may want. A DBA might have set up some scripts within the model database that needs to be applied to other databases when they get created, such as security. And our MSDB, it stores, if you're using the SQL Server agent, it stores our agent jobs in there. So how often should I back up? And some of you may be familiar with this term, and it's good to bring up and just to refresh it, but we're going to define our backups by our RTOs and RPOs. Our RTO being our recovery time objective and our RPO being our recovery point objective. Our recovery time objective is essentially how quickly do I need to get this database back online and available to the user or the application. Our RPO, our recovery point objective, is at what point in time do I need to get this database back to? Do I need to do 15-minute backups? Is it acceptable to have up to 15 minutes of data loss? As our RPO and RTO, as those times decrease, we need to start looking at other technologies that we won't be covering in this webinar today, but you need to start looking at things more high availability. If you need your data back almost instantly and your recovery point objective is really low, you may want to look at availability groups. So let's now discuss what types of backups we have. The first backup we're going to discuss is full backups. The full backup is essentially that it contains all of our data in a system or user database. It's everything. It covers point A to point B, any changes or modifications within the database as long as it's in simple mode. We start getting into other backups if our database is in bulk recovery or full recovery. But our full database essentially covers everything. It backs up the entire database, all of our data and our objects. We have our differential. The differential contains all of our changes since our last full backup. And we're going to discuss a little bit more about the differential when we get into a brief demo about backing up the differential. We have our log backups. The log backup is going to contain any transactions, any inserts, updates, deletes, or changes to your databases since your last log backup. And we're going to mention it, and we're not going to really get into a couple of these recoveries here, but you can also do a file group recovery, and you can do a partial, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead of myself. You can do a file group backup, and you can do a partial backup. So if you have file groups defined within your database, say for partitioning, you can back those up individually. And what a partial backup is going to do for you is it's going to back up only the read-write portion of your database. So let's take a quick look at some of these backups real quick. We are going to, getting ahead of myself here. All right. let's pull up. All right, so I have my client machine here. My client machine on my server, because we all know that we don't log in directly to the database server. And I say that jokingly because I've seen some great debates out on Twitter about this, but if at all possible, try and log into a client machine to do your work. Dung Pham, I'll answer your question here in a second if you don't mind. We don't back up the logs if we're on simple recovery mode. You are 100 actually you're 100% correct. If you are in simple mode, there is no need to back up the logs. The transactions are handled automatically within SQL Server. That does not provide you a point-in-time recovery, though. Okay, and we're on my client machine here. I have a set of databases defined. This is my 2014 instance, so let's pull up inside my template here the backups. We're going to connect to my SQL 2014 instance. Don't want to pull up Visual Studio because we're not interested in that. I'm going to map to my SQL 2014 drive here. I apologize, I should have had that done. And I'm just going to open up my DB backups. And let's delete all these for the purpose of this demo. All right. So when we talked about our backups, we talked about, let's get a little more real estate here. We talked about we have the full, our differentials, and our log backups. The first backup here, the first syntax we're going to look at is we're going to look at our full backup. So here we have our full backup. We have our backup of our database, AdventureWorks 2014. In this case, we're doing to our E drive, our disks, and we're doing it with init. And we'll discuss this init parm, but essentially this is saying overlay the database backup each time I run this script. So I'm going to execute this, and we're backed up. Now, this database is, let's say this database was in simple recovery, going back to Dung's question here. At this point, we are covered. Our database is backed up. We could recover to this point in time. So if we backed up every 24 hours, let's say for the AdventureWorks 2014 database, we could get back to this point in time. We have the possibility of losing up to 24 hours worth of data, but we can get here. Now, something I would like to mention while we're looking at our backups also is a lot of folks say, do I need to really back up my dev databases? Absolutely, yes, everything's supposed to be put in the TFS or some sort of check-in mechanism. But I can't tell you how many times, even things I've done where I forgot to check in a script and I've lost a database or something's been accidentally deleted, and having this backup has helped. So if you can, try and do the backups of as many of your user databases, even in dev, as possible. And with compression being available in 2008 and above, it reduced our footprint on our drives or our tapes, giving us the ability to back up more databases. Also on our slide deck, we saw that we could do a differential backup. And here's the syntax for a differential backup. The main difference here that I would like to point out is that right here, this is the switch, this is the flag that tells SQL Server, let's do a differential. A differential is just that. It's a backup of the data since it's a backup of any changes of data since the full backup. So let's do a backup of our differential database. Okay, we'll go out, we'll look at our drive, we have a differential backup there. Now, when I say it's a backup since the last full, so every time we do a differential, it's going to be any data changes since our last full. So let's just add a little data inside our database here, and I'm just doing a simple select into, nothing fancy here. And I'm going to, There's my first error, folks. Oh, man. All right. So anyhow, everybody can get a good laugh. All right, so I added 19,000 rows to my table. So let's do another backup of our database here, but let's add it to the media set that we have. So we're going to we're going to back up to a different a different backup file here. We're going to say a diff2. So we're going to execute this backup. And here we can see that our differential 2 is larger than our diff1. And that's because this tracked any changes since our last full backup. So you can see if for some reason you did 48K worth of changes in a day, a differential may not be beneficial to you. You may want to look at doing full backups versus differential, because as your week goes forward, this would be, your differential backup would become larger and larger. What is the risk versus, I saw a question down here, couple questions actually, and I apologize here. How does the file extension work for backups? So Raghava, apologize if I got your name wrong, Raghava. The extension, the .back, the .diff, or the .trn, which we haven't got to yet, is what I believe you're talking about. That's just an extension. It's got to be something meaningful to you. You could call it .backup. You could call it .differential. The extension doesn't really have any meaning other than what's meaningful to your environment. So if you have a standard around this, I would stick with that standard. What is the risk versus reward in compressing backups? Our understanding is that we should be compressing them. However, what would we be losing? Okay, it looks okay. So all right. So it appears we lost audio again.
No, you're good. It was probably just a glitch.
Okay, perfect. And then understanding okay, so Eric, great question about compression. I love compression. Our understanding is that we should be compressing them. However, what would we be losing by doing so? You're not losing anything other than disk space. So from a compression standpoint, you're going to see, I see databases with repeating values. Repeating values compressed nicely. And let's move forward here with, and we can get to some other of these questions, you're right, Moose, at the end of our session. So let's see, we got to the differential. So here we have our backup full, we have our diff1 and diff2. So hold those questions, and if I forget to answer them, I can also answer via emails for you all if we don't get to all the questions during the session, or I can follow up with a blog post. So let's look at another differential here. I want to point something out. We're going to back up a differential to our same media set. So we backed up, and if we look over here, our original differential that we took has grown in size, and that's because I've added an additional backup to that same media set. So if we look here, and this is going to be important to remember in one of our restore demos, but if we look here real quick at our restore header only information from disk, you can see here that we have two backups from different date times within that media set, and that's going to be important when you do a recovery because you're going to need to know which file you need to pull from this media set. And our final type of backup within our database, if we're in bulk recovery, and that we're going to be covering today, if you're in bulk recovery or full mode, is our log backup. And this is the syntax here. Backup, instead of database log, VentureWorks 2014 to disk. And something I want you to keep in mind here when you're doing your backups, because you can do them all through your Object Explorer here. You can do a task, you can do backup, and you can do the same things I'm doing through the graphical user interface as I'm doing in T-SQL. The benefit to having this is, and we're going to discuss this a little bit later, is we can document and we can put together a set of procedures to be able to do our backups. So let's go back to our slides. All right, so we covered the types of backups we have. And this just goes over in a little more detail the types of backups we have by our recovery model. You can see here we have full, differential, and partial, and for our full and bulk logged, we have full, differential, log, file group backups, as well as partial backups. The partial backups there are in green because you can do a point-in-time recovery on those particular models. One thing I can't emphasize enough, and I tried to do this when I was a team lead, and I tried to do this and drive this point home at a couple of my engagements, is we need to really document our backup plan. So we need to keep a repository somewhere of our backup schedules. We need to keep historical documentation of our backup times. We need to keep historical documentation of our backup sizes. This information is stored within our DMVs, and really, I don't really have a way or a preference how I want you to do this, other than I want you to do this. For example, I have a snapshot here of a screenshot. Oops, sorry about that, folks. I have a snapshot of a spreadsheet that I use, and you can see here I have my database name, I have my contact area, I have the point of contact for who I need to contact if I have issues with the database version, the recovery point, the recovery time, which we negotiated with our business units, our maintenance windows, my database grouping, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, and my backup location. You can store them within a database, and you can do SSRS reporting over them. Heck, you could even just store them in Word. As long as you have this documented somewhere, it makes me happy, and I think it'll make your end users happy because it gets us to the point where we can say, yes, I can recover your database. Okay, restore. We're going to go over our types of database recoveries. We're going to discuss testing our backups. And once again, if you get anything out of this webinar, it's going to be that I try and drive home document. Recoveries. This is really where the rubber meets the road. We can do backups six ways to Sunday, but without a recovery, we really don't. We could do backups all day, but without a recovery, we don't know if our backups will come back online successfully or not. So we're going to discuss a couple of recovery scenarios here. We're going to discuss the full recovery. We're going to discuss our differential recovery. The full recovery recovers all of our data for the database, all of our objects. The differential is going to recover any data that has changed since the last full, not since the last differential, but from the last full. And I think that may answer one of the questions we had inside the chat window. We're going to recover our logs. We'll discuss, well, let's discuss it here. A file restore will allow us to, and we're not going to go through a demo on that, and I can, if people are interested, I could do a blog post or I could write up in an email and we could discuss it that way. File restore will allow us to recover one or many damaged files within a database. Page restore we're not going to cover in this either, but in 2005, Microsoft gave us the ability in SQL Server that we could recover a page. And I'm going to be upfront and honest. Since 2005, I've only done this once, and it's normally I've only done this once because it took longer to recover the page than it would have actually taken to recover the database. There is benefit to that if you have a really large database. That was a lot of reallys in one statement. And you just don't want to take the chance of losing data. A page restore may be for you. All right, so let's walk through a few demos on these. Okay, I can do that, Alberto. I will, if you follow me on Twitter or if you send me an email reminder, I will definitely do a blog post on that. I can make that so. All right, so let's go back to our client machine here. Oh, no. There we go. Apologize for that. I thought it crashed. It did not. All right. So we're going to open up in our Template Explorer over here. I have a recovery set as SQL. We're going to connect up to our 2014 instance. The first, sorry about that. I think I just hit my mic, folks. I apologize. The first recovery we're going to do is a full database recovery. In this case, we're going to recover from our AdventureWorks 2014 backup we took. Now inside here, I'm going to use the replace command. I'm using the replace command because I know that I want to overlay this database and I don't care about the transactions within it. If you don't put replace and you go to do a recovery, SQL Server is going to give you a nice little error warning that's going to say a backup of your transaction log hasn't been done recently. Are you sure you want to do this? Back up the log before you do your recovery. In this case, we don't care about our transactions because I haven't done any and I'm mean. So we're going to execute this statement, and so it's just that simple. We have got our database back. Let's say this was taken 24 hours ago. We've got our database back in time. Back in time. And I am not a singer. I'm the only person who's been kicked out of church for singing. So here we're 24 hours back in time. Now we can do let's step through a full plus. Oh, and I guess it's important to note here, Dan, talking to myself, that this is a full recovery of the database. This is the objects, the data, everything that was inside that database has been recovered. Our next step would be to recover a differential. Now, to recover a differential, we're going to see two things here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to utilize replace because we don't care about the transaction logs. But we're going to leave the database and we're going to use this switch here, this flag, no recovery. What this is essentially going to tell SQL Server is I have more files I want to recover on my database. I have more transactions that I want to apply. So leave my database in a recovering state, allowing me to apply a differential, or in this case, a differential or a differential plus log backups. So let's go ahead and let's do the first part of this recovery, and I want to show you something here. So we've done our full recovery. If we refresh our databases over here, you can see that our database, AdventureWorks 2014, is left in a restoring state. That's because we told it to do so by utilizing, go away, utilizing this no recovery flag right there. So our next step is to restore our differential and bring the database online. By default, recovery is the default setting in here, so we don't actually have to physically put it. Yes, Chris, and we can discuss that a little bit later if you have more questions as well. We applied the full with no recovery, and then when we do the differential, we're going to bring the database back online. And we could put, with recovery, we could put this flag in here, but it's there by default, so we don't necessarily need to do that. So if we go over to our Objects Explorer now and we refresh our database, we have restored our AdventureWorks database back to our 24 hours ago backup. Let's pretend, and let's say our differential was done at 6 a.m. this morning, capturing all of our index changes and our maintenance and ETL loads that were done between the full backup and the differential. Our next is we're going to put it all together now. We're going to take our full and we're going to take a differential and a log, and we're going to recover all three of those. So let's say we had our database, we backed it up 24 hours ago. We took a differential of the database at 6 a.m. and you would normally have a log backup more frequently than 6 or 7 hours, but let's just say we take that log backups. I mean, I recommend starting at 15-minute increments for log backups. That'll allow you to lose up to 15 minutes worth of data. But it's all based on your workload and the number of transactions and how much data loss you're willing to lose, defined by your RTO and RPO. Actually, that would just be RPO. I apologize. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to restore our database, and in this case, we're going to just walk all the way through down. We're going to recover our full backup. We're going to recover our differential backup, and we're going to leave the database in recovering state because we're going to apply this log backup. This log backup captured any transactions that were taken since the last log backup. So let's say we did a lot of work within our database and the database crashed or we needed to go back in time. We could restore this log transaction to get us to our current state. And in this case, our last 15 minutes that we've been working on this webinar. So you can see here now we did our recovery. Our database is back online and available for transactions. So what we've done now is we've said, okay, we can take a full backup 24 hours ago, we can take a differential at 6 a.m., and we could take log backups every 15 minutes, and we could apply them to our database to get our users back to a consistent state and to the recent state. Now, let's see here. All right. And how are we looking on time? All right. Eric, let's take that question up at the end, and we can discuss what the difference between log and a differential is. In this case, we are going to wipe out our databases here, our database backups, and let's take a fresh backup of all the databases that we have to do this next demo. All right, we took a full, we took a differential, and now we're going to take a log backup. All right, let's flip back over here. Now, we have a set of recoveries we're going to do here. So we're going to walk through, and this is where we can do, when I mentioned a point-in-time recovery. So we could say that I want to bring this database back online as of 15 minutes ago. Let's say we had a user enter data into the database that we don't necessarily want, or it's bad, or they accidentally deleted something. We can bring the database back to a point in time. So first thing we're going to do before we do this, we're going to back up our log one more time, and we're going to back up, and we're not going to do an init. We're going to overlay, or we're going to add, to the media set of our transaction backup. So we're going to back up our log, AdventureWorks, to the disk, to our .trn file. In this case, I named it TRN, and that's for transaction. Now, I want to show you something here real quick. We're going to look at the restore header info only for this this backup. Here you can see that, and this is going to come into play here, but you can see that we have two. Let me go over a little bit here. We have two positions within our .trn file. We have a position 1. We have a position 1 and we have a position 2, and that's going to come into play when we recover our backups. Position 1 is going to be the oldest backup in that media set. Position 2, or file 2, is going to be the most recent backup in that media set. So that's why it's important to note that, because you want to have the sequence of transaction logs applied to your database in that order, otherwise you'll get an error. It's also important to note, like, for example, if you did a .bak file or a full backup and you didn't do an init and you overlaid, you could accidentally pull back the incorrect file. because if you use the GUI is going to pull the most recent backup that you took, but let's say you want to go back 48 hours versus 24 hours. You have to do some work in there to get it back to that point in time. It's a little bit easier to do here with T-SQL because you can actually put the file equals. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to restore our databases to the first transaction log, which will be file 1, and that is denoted here inside the SQL statements. We put this inside our syntax, our flag, our switch here. We say file 1, and that's going to tell SQL Server to go into that media set and pull file 1 back from that. So let's do our recovery. And here you can see we recovered our database back to the first transaction log, and we're still left in a restoring state. Correct. That is going to only give us the timestamps and the information about the files. It is not going to actually do a recovery of the database. And that is correct also that we have multiple files with our TRN file, within our TRN file. And that's what we're going to do with this next recovery here. Our next recovery, but in this case, we're going to tell it I want it to stop at a particular point in time. In this case, we made a note that somewhere that we want to stop at, like, let's just say 8:37, for example. In a real-world example, you would have a little more flexibility because you would have more time in between your log backups. But let's leave it to this, and let's see if we can get it to recover to this point in time via this log. Yes, good point, Carrie. That is a great point. I will recite the question when answering the. I will repeat the question when answering them out loud. That's a great point. All right, so we can see here that I recovered my database to a point in time as of 8:30 to 7 this morning. So this gets us to a point in time recovery. So this stop at feature right here that we utilize is what does that for us. And that's a really powerful feature because that gives us the ability to restore our transaction log up to, as we did here, 8:37 in the morning. Now, keep in mind, if any truncates happened or any bulk inserts happened while before that transaction log backup took place, you won't be able to do a point-in-time recovery. That's just something important to note. And I left, just to show you something also, there's a little trick here that I wanted to show you. You can see here that I've successfully restored my database, and I know we have no more transactions, but I accidentally left it in a no recovery state. So if you ever do that by accident, and I know I've done that plenty of times in rushing a recovery, you can do this restore database EventureWorks with recovery. You can run this command, and that will bring your database back online. So if you forget to take it out in no recovery, this will do that for you. Let's see, where do we look on time? Let's move forward, and if we have some time at the end, I want to look at the tail of the log demo I have here, and all these scripts are provided inside inside it as well. We should have time at the end. All right, so let's move this forward. All right, we looked at our different recovery scenarios. Once again, this slide just shows us here that we have the different types of recovery based on our compatibility, or not compatibility, our recovery model, full, bulked, or simple. Sad face. Test your backups. Without a recovery, your backup, this little backup database template I showed here, your backup's sad. Without recoveries, we don't know if we've had a successful backup or not. So once again, Test your backups. A complete backup is not enough. We can say that we've done a backup, but I've been in cases where we've had a backup and we've gone to recover from it and we've had hardware failures, or the drives are bad, or a third-party vendor was doing it for us and the backup wasn't valid. So that being said, a backup is just not enough. Find a place to test your backups and do a recovery. We need a playground. As database administrators or recovery administrators, we need a playground to play with our recoveries and to test our recoveries and to test our scripting mechanisms to make sure, and heck, to just do simple backup and recoveries to test them and keep yourself fresh. You don't want to get the call at 3 a.m. and forget something simple. It happens to the best of us. Testing allows for recovery and strategy validation. We don't want to get to the point where it's 3 a.m. and we're asked to do a recovery and we don't know how to do it. Also, we don't want to get in an event where we have a DR scenario. I live here in Tampa, Florida, and I've worked for companies that their data centers are right down here by the bay. In a class 3 or 4, class 5 hurricane, we've been told that we're going to have 20 feet of water in downtown Tampa. That's going to flood many of our main data centers down here. In the event of a crisis, if we had a hurricane and we had a failover to, let's say, Atlanta, we need to know what our recovery and our process is in the event of a crisis. This also allows us to gather timings. The most frustrating thing, I think, to an end user or even the management is that when we're recovering a database, we can't tell them how long it's going to take to recover. If we do these test recoveries, if we test our backups, we can also get our timings, and we can say, oh yeah, VentureWorks 2014, I know I can recover that in 5 minutes for you. I know I can recover that in 30 minutes for you. Let me get that started. So test your backups, test. Recovery and backups, they're like lovebirds. They need each other. Without a backup, there is no recovery. Without a recovery, there is no backup. They need each other. And this goes back to, and like I said, I know I'm driving this home, but standardize and document your backup locations. Standardize your recovery scripts and procedures. Put them into a centralized location. When you standardize and document your backup landing locations, do the same for your recovery scripts and procedures. Document your recovery times. When you test, great question. When you recover VentureWorks 2014 to your test environment, your playground, write those times down. Make sure you have those. And which databases should be recovered as a set. This is the little long lost puppy out there that gets ignored a lot. A lot of times our applications require a set of databases. Understand what databases need to be recovered for that particular application and in which order those databases need to be recovered. Document those and put those in your document as well. So now when somebody comes to you and says, hey Dan, can you back up or can you restore my database for me? You can say, piece of cake, keep calm and eat on. And it looks like we have a little bit of time here, so it's super fun time. So I'm glad we got to this portion, and we should still have some time for questions at the end. But here I want to look at some things like the tail log backup. Let's talk about copy only real quick. Copy only, and you would use the syntax with copy only inside your backup statement, allows us to back up a database without breaking the log chains or without breaking the backup chain. So if you have a set of backups, say you have your full, your differential, and your logs, that's considered your backup chain. If somebody were to go in and unknowingly do a backup in the middle of one of your log backups and you didn't know it, that would break up your chain, and you would actually have to recover from that point in time and then apply the logs from there. What the copy, Liz, somebody's report, Liz, can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. All right, Chris, I apologize. Hopefully this clears up for you because this is super fun time. Um, so with the copy only, it allows us to take a backup without impacting our chain, our backup chain. And then I want to talk a little bit about third-party vendors, but let's get to the demos first. Demos are fun. Third-party vendors, I want to talk about them, but let's look at a couple more demos here. Um, hmm. That's interesting, Chris, because it appears. Oh, that's good, Chris. I'm glad. Um, All right, so let's go over here and we are going to go into my templates again, and we are going to, let's first look at a tail of the log here. All right, so we're going to connect to my 2014 instance. And this just shows the power of the tail of the log backup. So let's go over here real quick and let's delete my backup so there is no confusion in my head. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to back up our user database. We're going to back up user DB1 and we're going to set it to disk. And you can see here I took a backup of my database. All right, now don't do this in your production environment, but you can play with this in one of your personal environments or something like a dev environment. We're going to alter the database. We're going to set it offline. We're going to alter it and set it offline so that I can do this. My database over here, if you see to the left, my user DB is now offline. I'm going to use XP Command Shell, which also try and have this turned off. If you have SOX or PCI audits, they will hit you on this if this is turned on in your environment. But in this case, so I didn't have to pop in and out, I wanted to use XP Command Shell. I'm going to delete my file there. Now I'm going to bring my database back online. Oh no, our database is corrupt or there's something wrong with it. Well, it's showing in a recovery pending state. So if we were to just try and do a backup of the log at this point in time, we would get an error. And that's because our database is offline. We have the ability to do this thing. You hear us talk about it, and you'll hear in the hallways of, well, hey, I did a tail of the log backup. We have this ability to do the tail of the log when our database is in this state. And that's by using this, whoa, sorry about that. That's by using this no truncate statement. What this essentially tells SQL Server to do is it says, regardless of the state of my database, try and take a backup of the log. So in this case, now let's try this backup log. We saw our previous one failed. Let's take this backup. It succeeded. Even though our database is still showing in a pending state, we were able to take a backup of the log. Now, here's the fun of it. Let's use our master. We're going to go to the master database. We're going to restore our database from the full we took, and then we're going to apply the tail of the log backup that we just took. That is just downright cool. All right, so we have essentially taken a corrupt or database that was offline, took our tail of the log backup, which I can't tell you, stress enough how cool that is, because let's say we had 30 minutes of work and we lost that file for some reason. We could have lost up to 30 minutes of data. You, as the superhero, were able to do the tail of the log backup and basically restore the database with no data loss. Unfortunately, no. Eric, does this work in simple recovery? Unfortunately, no, it does not work in simple, because you have to be able to do log backups. Great question, which is one of the reasons why if you have a key or an important database, I always recommend to keep it in full recovery. All right, so let's go over here. We talked about Azure backup, or what time are we looking at? Oh, we got time. All right, so let's look at a piecemeal recovery. My dear friend Bradley Ball had a script, and I stole some of this from him, so you may see some similarities. But what we're going to do now is we're going to do a piecemeal recovery. of our database. And like I said, this is super fun time now. And all these scripts are available to you, and I'm also going to open up my file group information. And I'm also available by email or, you know, or Twitter to discuss this with you and go over the finer details of this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to use our demo be in our backup and recovery database, and we're just going to select through it to show that we have some data in there. Now this database has already been set up with partitioning, and I also included that inside the scripts, so all you have to do is set up this partition database and these scripts will work there as well. We're going to select from our user by our partition user demo be in our database. Boy, that's a mouthful. When I set that up, I didn't think of that. And you can see here we have data in each of our partitions. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go back through and we're going to take a full backup, a transaction log backup, and then a tail of the log backup here of our demo be in our database, so we have something to recover to. All right, so we took our backups. So now we're going to start the piecemeal recovery. Let me get a drink here real quick. All right, there we go. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to restore our primary file group, our file group 1, file group 2, and file group 3. And I think this may answer one of the questions earlier or cover one of the demos. If not, please, whoever asked that question, get back to me on that. Something to note here. This is considered an online restore. It's going to be an online recovery once you recover the primary file group. A lot of you will hear us say only keep the system tables and system information on the primary file group, create a secondary file group, for example, file group 1, and make that as your default and put all your user database is on there. This is why, because when we want to do a piecemeal recovery, we're going to first recover our primary file group. Once that's done, our database is online. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to recover our primary file group 1, file group 2, and file group 3. All right, so we have recovered that. So you can see here, now let's recover our logs to get us to a consistent point in time. Now we're going to try and query from there. You can see here you can't query from there because file group 6 is offline. However, let's also go over here and look at our, and this script is included, our master files. And you can see here that we still are in a recovery pending state. So we are doing a piecemeal recovery. So file group 1, 2, and 3 are online, available for querying, and let's say we wanted to bring file group 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on at another time or at a lower usage period so we don't impact our users. We can do that at a later date. The important thing is on file group 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, keep your archive data there, or on file group 8 even, keep your archive data. Put your key load data, your key data on the earlier file groups so you can get them back up and running and get your applications back online. No, it is not, John, it is not necessary. As a matter of fact, we could just restore file group 3 if we wanted to. So it is not necessary. Okay, so we're not, in the essence of time, there's some other things I want to show you real quick. I'm not going to complete this recovery, but you would just follow the same process in bringing the other database files online. This script is included with the demo. Here, basically what this SQL statement does is it'll go out and it'll pull backup history information for you. And when I said document, 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 you could use this to put it in SSIS, or you could put it in, you could run this in SSRS, but here it'll show you the type of backup. What was its initial size? What's its compressed size? Is it compressed? The level of compression you're getting. I know there was a question about Azure backups. So essentially, Azure backups are, we can't get into the whole technology behind it, but I do use blob backups. Um, and inside the script, there's the 4 steps here. Yes, all these scripts are provided, can be provided to you. I'd be happy to give those to you, absolutely. And if there's any questions, you have my email in that. So here's a quick example. Here's the 4 steps I recommend you read over. The first 2 we're not going to get into today because it's setting up credentials, but you can, and then so you set up your credentials within Azure. You create your credential key here within your SQL Server instance, and inside, when you create that, you're going to get a key. It's a super long key. You're going to put that in here when you create your credentials. And as you can see, the backing up to the blob essentially uses the same syntax, except you're going to put your location, your container name, and the backup you want to use. It's as simple as running that. If we hit execute, this will run, and let me just wrap this up and we will get to some quick questions. And you can see here, if I refresh this, this is my blob container out in Azure. I've already logged in, and we're taking a backup as of 11:57. So it's the same process, and these scripts, like I said, are provided with the demos and everything, so you can utilize these as well. You'll have to set up your own Azure storage and tweak these to point to that. But once the backup is complete, you would be able to recover from your blob storage. All right, so that is it with Super Fun Time. Vendors, the one thing I wanted to say about vendors was a lot of us use Commvault, a lot of us use NetBackup. That takes a little bit away from the DBAs. Get familiar with them, utilize them. I found that NetBackup and Commvault, for example, have all the same capabilities. If your backup team doesn't allow you to do it, ask them at least to practice with it so you can become familiar. Let's see if we can walk through a couple of these questions. I know we got a couple minutes here, and still not sure. Eric Jenkins asked, still not sure the difference between log and differential restores. All right, let's see. So the differential restore is going to recover your data to that point in time of where you took the differential. The differential can be done on a database that's in simple mode or it's in full mode, Eric. What a log backup does for you is that the log backup tracks any transactional changes, and it allows you to do a point-in-time recovery. So if you don't need to do a point-in-time recovery and it's acceptable to have data loss up to your last differential, then differentials will work for you. A log backup provides you to replay all your transactions up to a point in time. So let's say you took a differential at 6 a.m. and you took log backups every hour up until 11 a.m. You could restore your differential, and then you could replay your log backups all the way to that point in time. Your log backups, in not all cases, but in most cases, are going to be smaller than your differential backups. And Eric, if that didn't answer your question, it's a great question. You have my email. If you want to send me an email, I'll try and follow up with you on that. I want to provide justice to your answer. So if you have any further questions on that, please reach out to me, okay? And let me know, Eric, if that, okay, cool. And are there questions, let's see, that I missed? Because I apologize if I did. Chris had to leave, unfortunately, because it's still showing muted. If you have a reporting database that I want to be able to recover from, compile and store program. All right, Rick Fitch. I'm looking at your Rick Fitch. where is stored proc stored? If I have a reporting database, no transactions, but I want to be able to recover from compiling a sproc on the wrong server, etc., will different transaction allow recovery of the procs that changed? Um, Unfortunately, SQL Server natively, Rick, doesn't allow us to recover objects if that's what you're asking. There are third-party tools that will allow you to do that, but if you need to recover an object, let's just say, what you could do is you could restore the database from your full backup to your point in time, and as a different name and recover the object that way. Unfortunately, if I'm understanding the question correctly, unfortunately SQL Server doesn't allow us to do object level recovery yet. And hopefully that answered your, oh, Chris, excellent. I'm glad. I'm always sad when there's technical difficulties. So Rick, let me know if that answered your question. If it did not, like I said, please ask again, and I'll get back to you. Can you post some suggested best practice options? How often to set a full and differential backup? Doug, I can definitely do that. Give me a little bit of time at a client. Yes, Jude, this is recorded. Jude asked, is this recorded? And yes, it is, and you can watch it later. You'll also have the slide deck, Jude, and you'll have the scripts. So Doug, back to Doug's question. Doug asked, could you post some suggested options, best practices on how often to set a full and differential backup? Absolutely. Doug, the best my opinion there is it's based on workload, but I'll try and put something together for you there. Also, if you want to fire me off an email at detailer@pragmaticworks.com, it keeps me honest, and I won't forget, because like I said, I am at a client site this week. Or where can I download the scripts? The scripts, Liz, are these scripts going to be available for download, or can we send them to the folks at request?
Yes, if you'll email me, Liz, it's the email that comes with all of your GoToWebinar information. I'll be happy to send you them. We just couldn't upload them into the GoToWebinar platform.
Okay, so Durga, please reach out to Liz or myself, and we can get you those scripts. And I know there were a lot of questions. I feel like I missed some that went back. Here's our opportunity. Let's see. Did I miss? Is it possible to recover? Oh, here we go. Is it possible to recover to a? So Chris Fair asked, is it possible to recover to a different instance and maintain all security? How can this be done? Yes, Ramakant, we're going to. And Liz's email is in the invite. Liz's email is in the webinar invite that you received. That, or you can also email me at detailer@pragmaticworks.com. Is it possible to, sorry Chris, I went ADD there. That's, my wife complains about that. Is it possible to recover to a different instance and maintain all security? How can this be done? Chris, that's a great question, and it's a interesting, challenging one. So yes, you can restore to a different instance. You may need to use a with move script. And you know what, Chris? Email me at detailer@pragmaticworks.com, and it may take me a little while to get it to you, but I'll either do a blog post or that. But yes, it can be done, and the maintaining the security, actually, believe it or not, is our most challenging part of that question, because I know a lot of us have different security on dev than we have in prod, so we either have to re-script it, or we have to keep our SIDs, our IDs in sync if we have SQL users. If we're using Windows authentication, it makes it a little easier. So yes, so it can be done, but you have some challenges. So if you want to reach out to me, please do, Chris. Chris Fair, it's detailer@pragmaticworks.com. Let's see. Ramakant Singh asked the question, if suppose I have one full backup and 4 or 5 differentials in the latest T-log. Okay, so that's a great question. So when you take differentials, so if you have one full backup, and then let's say you take six differentials throughout the week, let's say we get to Saturday, we have 6 differentials, and we have T-logs since that differential, the only thing you need to do is recover your full database backup, recover your most recent differential. You don't have to recover all 6 differentials. That gets us back to the discussion of that your differential is the backup since your last full. So Monday's going to contain everything since Monday. Tuesday's going to contain Tuesday and Monday. Wednesday's going to contain Wednesday, Monday, or Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday, and so on and back. So when you're restoring your differential, you recover to your full, you recover to your most recent differential, and then you recover your T-logs from there. And hopefully, Ramakant, that answered your question. Um, so, Song, if your full backup file is corrupted, so if your full backup is corrupted, unfortunately what you're going to need to do is go back to the most recent full that's correct, which is why I always recommend test your backups. That full backup is always going to be required, which I think gets to Vinay's questions as well. One of Vinay's questions is, so we'll always need the full to recover? Yes, you will always need your full database backup to start with. So I think that covered 2 questions there. And I know we're running on a little late today. Liz, are we able to take a couple more questions?
Yeah, if you want to, that's fine.
Okay, if there's any more questions out there, that any that I missed, I got a little carried away in my demos there, so I may have missed a couple of questions. So if you have any other questions, please feel free, or um, we can close out this webinar for today. I do appreciate people attending. This is, like I said, restores and backups are near and dear to my heart. Oh, Jason, repost. Do you ever have to, sorry, Jason, I missed that. Jason Adams asked, do you ever have to restore the master DB? Oh, I did remember seeing this, Jason. Shoot, I apologize. Do you ever have to restore the master DB when restoring a user DB? That is a great question. Unless my master database is corrupt, I don't see the need to recover. So no, to recover the user DB, a user DB, I have not had in 12 years of restoring SQL Server databases, unless the master DB is corrupt, I've never needed to go back to a point in time and recover master to recover a user DB, Jason. Jeff Willett asked how to best, oh yes, how best to size the transaction logs when doing full backups so they don't grow out of control. All right, Jeff Willett asked how best to control the size of transaction logs when doing full backups so they don't grow out of control. One of the ways to do that is to take more frequent log backups, Jeff, but that can become cumbersome. To control the size, a lot of that's going to have to be done in the application. You could, when you're doing index, if you're seeing your transaction log blow up when you're doing re-indexing, you could do transaction log backups in between your larger indexes. And then, so like, let's say index 1's 60 gig, index 2 through that. It's only 10 gig. You could re-index your 60 gig. You could do the re-index on your 60 gig, rebuild your 60 gig index, sorry, and then you could do a transaction log backup, and then you could do the rest of your indexes and backup there. How else could you control that? So the main thing is to control the amount of transactions with it that your applications are doing. That's one of the ways to do that. The other way is to take more frequent transaction log backups, and the other is to if you're seeing that during reindexing, you can take more frequent log backups between your index rebuilds or reorgs. Jeff, if you have a specific instance where you're seeing some things, email me at detailer@pragmaticworks.com, and we can go over the more specifics as to what you're seeing, because that is an issue that I see a lot, and I have some tricks that I could do that. I use Ola Hologren scripts to help with that a little bit. Okay, so Durga asked, MSDB stores the SQL SSIS jobs information. Do we need to recover this DB while requiring a user DB? Unless it has specific information pointing back into MSDB, no, you would not need to recover your MSDB, Durga. I don't see a need to do that when restoring the user DB or model DB either. The only reason I normally restore MSDB or model is if I have corruption or I'm rebuilding a server. How about, Durga also asked, how about SQL 2012 always on feature for a backup purpose? If it's great to offload your backups, Durga. The downside to that is once you start doing backups on your, say, availability group 2, you have to start paying for that instance. Whereas if you're just using it if you're just using that availability group as a true failover, you don't need to pay for that. So the downside is the cost of the enterprise license. The upside is you can offload the work off of your main database server to the second. So yes, I have implemented that. I haven't implemented it as well because once I present the cost to the client or to management, they say, oh, we're fine. And they'll just say, well, can you control the backup so off hours and keep them out of the way of the clients, and we can do it that way. But yeah, it's a great solution. So I've done it both ways. What normally gets in the way is the cost of the enterprise licenses on the secondary server, Durga. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for attending. All right, we got 85 of you still on here, so this is good. Oh, 84, 83, we're counting down. Jason, thank you. Like I said, please, I think you're one of the ones, email me, and yep, email me and we'll go over some more of the technical details of it. And like I said, folks, if you email me, give me a little bit of time. I'm currently at a client site, off and on, but I love this stuff, and maybe we can get some blog posts out of this and provide some additional detail and information.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
The recording, Liz, will be up at pragmaticworks.com, or?
Yes, everyone will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome. Ramakat, real quick, if you want to email me, we can discuss in email more about the Azure backup script, okay? I know we had to rush that towards the end in super fun time, so email me